Her husband's half-brother blackmailed her and threatened to expose her past if she didn't confess what she did years ago. Stay tuned for a chilling story that will leave your mind blown. Welcome back, everyone, to my channel. Oh my God, Christmas is just around the corner, and today we're bringing you a popular Nigerian movie packed with twists and turns you'll never see coming. Stay glued, friends. Don't take your eyes off this story. And please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe for more intriguing movies. The movie begins with two newlyweds, Torella and James, enjoying a lovely dinner at their beautiful home. They share tender moments, confess their love, and seem truly happy together. The next day, James's half-brother Richard returns from the United States. James is thrilled to see him, and Richard compliments Torella's beauty, thanking her for taking good care of his brother. Afterward, they show Richard to his bedroom, which is tastefully decorated. But did anyone else notice something odd? Richard couldn't seem to stop shaking hands with Torella. What's going on here? Let's keep watching. Later, Richard and Torella strike up a conversation, but there's an unsettling vibe. Torella seems reserved and uncomfortable, and the silence between them feels awkward. Thankfully, James joins them and lightens the mood, leading to a pleasant family dinner, as Richard shares stories about his time in the United States. That night, Torella is startled to find Richard lingering nearby. She bids him goodnight, but his demeanor is unsettling. His intentions seem far from friendly. He begins making cryptic comments about her past, leaving Torella confused and uneasy. She eventually excuses herself, trying to make sense of his words. What could he possibly mean? Later that night, Torella has a nightmare about a traumatic event from her past where she was abused by a man. Her loving husband comforts her and helps her return to sleep. The next morning, Richard crosses a line by entering their bedroom uninvited. His behavior is increasingly strange, and Torella firmly asks him to leave. Richard's presence begins to weigh on Torella, leaving her restless and distracted. Her friend notices her unease and asks what's wrong. Torella confides in her, but her friend dismisses her concerns, suggesting she's overthinking and that Richard is simply trying to adjust to the family. Reassured, Torella tries to calm down. Later, while preparing dinner in the kitchen, Torella finds Richard hovering around her again. He offers to keep her company, but she politely declines, saying she's nearly done. However, Richard starts behaving manipulatively and even attempts to blackmail her before leaving. At this point, even viewers might wonder if Richard is entirely sane. At dinner that evening, the family tries to bond, but Torella is visibly uneasy. She attempts to talk to James about what's been bothering her, but Richard interrupts with excuses, preventing her from speaking. Torella is increasingly overwhelmed, leaving us to wonder, what does Richard really want? The next day, Richard confronts Torella in the kitchen, speaking in riddles and parables that leave her baffled. Then he drops a bombshell. He knows what she did in the past, but he assures her her secret is safe with him as long as she complies with his demands. What could Torella have done? That night, Richard tries to manipulate James, claiming that Torella is acting strange, talking to herself and behaving erratically. This makes James worry, and when he later finds Torella distressed, he tries to find out what's wrong. However, Torella brushes him off, insisting she's fine before going to bed. James continued to be caring and reassuring to Torella, trying his best to comfort her. The next day, Richard visited again, acting strangely as usual. He gifted Torella a necklace that seemed oddly familiar to her, though she couldn't recall where she had seen it before. Meanwhile, James sought Richard's advice, confirming the observations Richard had shared with him the previous day. Richard began planting ideas in James's mind, suggesting he pay closer attention to Torella's behavior. He brought up how James had noticed her frequently waking up startled from her sleep. Richard hinted that this might be a sign of unresolved baggage or secrets Torella was keeping from him, urging James to ask her more probing questions. That same day, Torella had the same recurring dream. Something about the dream seemed even more familiar this time. Can you guess what it was? Share your thoughts, and let's keep going. Torella became deeply worried, questioning why she kept having this dream repeatedly. The next day, Richard approached her again. On the surface, it seemed as though he was genuinely concerned for her well-being and sanity. However, his actions only worsened her fears. He even started giving her cryptic secret notes, adding to her distress. Summoning her courage, Torella decided to talk to James about Richard's unsettling behavior. She told him that Richard wasn't the person he appeared to be. However, James dismissed her concerns, assuming she was being paranoid. He suggested she get more rest and assured her that she would feel better with sleep. It's truly painful when someone doesn't understand what you're trying to explain, isn't it? The next day, while Torella was in the kitchen, Richard approached her yet again. This time, his actions were outright frightening. At this point, you can't help but wonder, can this man stop whatever game he's playing? Meanwhile, James's worry for his wife grew. Torella confessed that she didn't feel safe and that something was seriously wrong. James, however, began to grow irritated by what he perceived as her wild imagination. He asked her to address whatever issues were causing her distress and walked away. The following day, Richard continued trying to manipulate James, sowing doubts about Torella. He didn't seem to have any intention of stopping his torment. Richard even escalated his threats, warning Torella that he would reveal her secret if she didn't comply. At dinner, James noticed Torella's distant and cold demeanor toward Richard. He pointed it out, but Richard maintained his facade of being the understanding and caring one, further irritating Torella and deepening her worry and restlessness. What do you think should be done about someone like Richard? Share your thoughts with us. Torella became increasingly terrified of Richard. One fateful night, she had the same recurring dream, but discovered a shocking truth. Richard was present during the traumatic events of her past. The next day, consumed by fear, Torella tried to run away. However, she quickly retreated upstairs upon hearing James's voice. When James inquired about the noises, she covered it up, saying it was just part of her exercise routine. Though James was concerned, she dismissed his worries. After all, who would believe her? In a moment of desperation, Torella had an outburst. She confronted Richard in James's presence, declaring that she wasn't losing her mind or going crazy. Richard, however, intervened, preventing James from going after her. He suggested that drastic measures were needed to help Torella recover her sanity. The following day, the family was preparing to go out when Torella finally scolded Richard for the unsettling way he looked at her. Richard brushed it off, implying she was losing her mind, while James continued to struggle with understanding what was truly happening. Torella grew increasingly frustrated when James seemed to side with Richard over her, which led her to storm back inside, leaving James confused and in the dark. Clever move, Torella. Unwilling to give up, Torella became completely fed up with living in fear in her own home. Determined to turn the tables, she decided to play along with Richard's games while secretly searching for evidence to prove her sanity. One day, while searching Richard's room, she stumbled upon a shocking truth. However, her husband caught her in the act and demanded to know why she was there. Torella pleaded with James to trust her, but his growing confusion and mistrust hurt her deeply. James even admitted he felt like he didn't know her anymore, which only strengthened Torella's resolve to save her marriage. Determined to clear the air, Torella had a flashback to the traumatic events of her past. Finally, she summoned the courage to confess everything to her husband. She recounted all that had happened years ago, including the fact that Richard was involved. James was overwhelmed, unsure how to process the revelations. It was a lot to take in. The next day, James decided to confront Richard, subtly baiting him to reveal more. Richard's discomfort and defensiveness gave James reason to doubt him further. Slowly, James began piecing everything together, determined to uncover the full truth of what had transpired and who was responsible. Later, James apologized to Torella for doubting her and allowing his brother to manipulate her within their home. He embraced her warmly, offering comfort and support. This renewed confidence gave Torella the strength to stand up for herself and her marriage. When the time came for a heated confrontation, Torella's bravery visibly rattled Richard. Meanwhile, James's persistence in questioning Richard caused Richard to lose his composure. Furious, Richard threatened to harm Torella, but James was always there to protect her. Still, Richard continued to pretend everything was fine in James's presence. One fateful day, when Torella and Richard were alone, Richard's anger got the better of him. He lashed out, attempting to hurt her, But in his rage, he inadvertently confessed everything. Richard admitted that he was responsible for the death of the man in Tarella's past because the man owed him money. Worse still, Richard had blackmailed Tarella for a sum of 30 million naira to cover it up. This was the true meaning behind the notes he had given her. Richard threatened Tarella again, warning her that he could hurt her without leaving any trace. Though she pleaded with him, Richard had no idea that his plans were about to backfire. Later that same day, James uncovered the full truth. Enraged, he confronted Richard, who tried to feign innocence. But James was no longer buying into his lies. Richard finally revealed his true motives, jealousy and envy, stemming from being a half-brother. He showed no remorse for his actions and even threatened to do worse. This confrontation escalated into a heated altercation, and James nearly caused a grievous scene. Thankfully, Tarella stepped in and pleaded with him to stay calm. In the end, Richard tried to escape, but his plans were thwarted when the police arrived just in time. He was arrested for murder, bringing much-needed relief to James and Tarella. With Richard out of their lives, the couple returned to their happy and peaceful days together. This story serves as a powerful reminder that not everyone should be welcomed into our inner circle. As the Bible teaches, protect your heart with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of your life. Let us all strive to follow God's word, as it is our manual for living successfully as His children in our daily lives and affairs. This remarkable movie, produced by the talented Uche Eze TV, is a must-watch. Be sure to check it out. Thank you for watching, and please don't forget to subscribe to this amazing channel. Stay tuned for more exciting, educational, and inspirational movie updates. Take care, friends.